I come from an organization called Verke, which is the Finnish National Development Center for Digital Youth Work. And we have this lovely system where we have Center for Expertise for different topics on youth work, and digital youth work is one of them. And we are fully funded by the Ministry of Culture and Education, which is really cool. So we don't have to research where we find funding all the time, which we know is exceptional for an organization. This is a little group, just to show our faces. And what we do is we train youth workers. We try to achieve that knowledge of digital youth work would expand. But also from the other side, that we train practitioners, but also we try to influence youth work organizations. So people actually have the necessary like resources and everything to do their job. And thirdly, we try to support organizations and practitioners to innovate new concepts, new things within the digital youth work field. I know that Finland has a reputation of being very advanced in digital youth work topics, but we are actually mostly ahead on digital online-based youth work. But for example, maker culture, it barely exists in the Finnish youth work field, which as a technology nerd, I'm kind of sad about personally, but we try to influence all of these things. From this side, I'll just point out that one thing that we do is we produce materials. So we have on our website, we have VERKE, so verke.org. We have materials, we have physical books that you can order within Europe for free, or just look at the PDF. And there is another website, digitalyouthwork.eu, where there is a lot of training materials and video resources for you to use. So when I talk about digital life skills that young people need, we talk about them from always the perspective of youth work. And it's no longer a question of whether digital youth work should be done or not, but rather it's about how we do it, how we implement this, and how we engage with the digital stuff. Because if we don't, we will become outdated relics to all the young people that use our services. It's not a question of why. But why is it then vital to understand what's going on with young people's digital lives, so young people's lives in general, because there is no difference between the digital life and the offline life for young people. Firstly, digitalization is not something that's going to happen in the near or far future, but it's rather happening now. And by very large accounts, it's already happened. Young people don't anymore go online. I've heard it from a colleague that the only time a young person goes online is when they go to the separate room where they forgot their phone. That's the only time that they actually go online. The ownership of information is something very different from what it used to be. I'm 39 now, and I'm very much. I've heard it a lot that young people have poor media skills. I would say that's not the case, but rather young people the media environment is so much more complex. Anyone can produce information, at least technically, on the same level as anyone else. And this, of course, puts a lot of stress on how the media skills of young people. And digital skills are now a vital part of citizenship skills, because you really can't be engaged with modern society without having some level of technological and digital skills. You have to be able to sort information, where to search for that information. You have to be able to produce information into that whole massive field. But it's not only limited to participation, it's also about life itself. And we often talk about digital life skills, because a lot of social contacts for young people, social engagement for young people is now also moving and moved toward digital environments. And there is a lot of talk about digital natives sometimes. And the question to ask often is, or I get asked often is, who are the digital natives? And digital natives, as the term is often understood, means people that are, because they are young, because they are born with digital technology, they are really sort of already have all the digital things. But I would argue that there aren't any digital natives. The kind of thing doesn't exist. And I've been trying to launch a campaign for, I don't know, a year now, hashtag punch a colleague. Please don't actually punch your colleagues. But if they start talking about digital natives in the sense that, oh, they know everything already, please gently but firmly correct them. Because there really is a digital divide, and it's not a question of age. Anu Pöyskö from Wien Extra Medienzentrum from Austria put it like this, that the idea of someone understanding everything about digital media just because they're young is just as ridiculous of us sleeping in a library and knowing everything about the world. So the point is that it's not automatic. There are huge issues to tackle. There is a huge task for youth work within this field of education. And there is really a lot of stuff we need to address. One way of looking at the digital divide is this. It's about access to technology. We tend to assume that all young people have smartphones, or all people have access to the same kind of computers, but it's not really the case. It can be because of socioeconomical things. It can be because their parents just don't like digital technology because they don't understand them, or they choose not to have technology at home. And this is something that youth work can have a role in, because we can level the playing field so every young person has the access to same kind of technology. But it's also about skills to use technology, because if we are just kind of passive users of technology with different levels of skills, then obviously some young people will have the upper hand in this whole thing. And we educate young people, we can help them learn those skills. And when we're talking about the digitalized world around us, it's really also about level of understanding how the underlying technology works. I'll take an example. If we don't understand that there are computer programs called algorithms that select the information that we see on social media or media outlets, then we are thinking that we have the kind of unbiased view of the world when we don't. So things like these are very vital. And it's of course about participation versus access to information. I'll quickly show one or two slides from our research into what's happening in the digital youth work field in Finland. We recently did a survey of municipal youth workers in Finland with a record number of over 1,200 respondents. And the attitude is really positive. People really want to be engaged and stay abreast of digital developments. And about half consider interaction in digital environments to be just as valuable as face-to-face youth work, which is kind of cool. But the services they actually use, I mentioned before that social media and online activities are really commonly used in Finland. And here it's also in the last 3 months, 90% of youth workers had actually interacted online with young people. But then when we go to other forms of digital youth work, like maker culture, which is the last one here on this slide, engaging in technological tinkering, only 8% had done that within the last 3 months. So that's a huge gap in another part of digital youth work. And finally, what's mostly being used in the Finnish youth work field, instant messaging, like WhatsApp, 84% had used it. Instagram, next runner up at 80%. And Facebook is still tying in at 80%, which is odd because young people, as we all know, aren't using Facebook anymore, let alone email, blah, blah, blah. And Snapchat, for example, which is in Finland very popular with young people, only about 40% of youth workers had actually used WhatsApp within youth work. So that is an interesting vision to it. So young people, when they're communicating on digital platforms, I might not have all the answers, but I'm posing questions for you to pick up on when you are thinking of engaging young people on digital platforms. So mostly when they engage in digital environments, it's a natural part of their day-to-day activities. There's a question, yes, I will be able to share this presentation. SlideShare /verke.org will be the address. So I will make it available there as soon as I finish. And again, most young people really don't go online, but rather they are connected all the time. And this, of course, has its pluses and minuses. Let's say it's really cool that young people can actually find their peer groups, irrespective of where they live geographically. If they live in the middle of the forest in rural Finland, they can still connect to their peers, which is really cool. Then again, if they're bullied at school, for our generation, at least it stopped when you got home from school. But for young people now, it probably continues in online environments. I don't think there is such a thing of online bullying because it's bullying no matter where it happens. But they get no respite from it, or they can be shut down from social circles just by cutting off their access to these digital groups. And the question for youth work is, how do we react to this? How can we support young people in these kind of phenomena? How can we help them find their peer groups? How can we support their how they communicate with each other? And I think Martin already mentioned that the rules of communication are very different depending on the platform. And if we as youth workers want to work within these platforms, we have to play by the same rules. I don't think we have to talk with the same language, because then we get to the meme where Steve Buscemi is with their hat turned and they're saying, hello, fellow youngsters, because young people pick up on this fakeness a lot. But there is always a different style of communication, really. And the speed and intensity is very different. So, for example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp is about direct messaging or groups. So what if we offer to be contacted via WhatsApp? We have to play by the same rules. Young people will assume, if we don't specify it, that we are always available, which we are not. And how young people connect within their own groups, we have to kind of work with that kind of culture. Then again, if we go to Instagram, it's a very visual media. We can't just communicate by text. A lot of youth workers are sharing pictures of posters on their walls, which is really not the visual thing, and that doesn't work. So we have to think about what could be the youth work angle. Do we, for example, tell stories from within our work environment with this visual media? And if we go to Snapchat, it's by nature very unedited, very straightforward, and very real, if we can say this. So it needs to be on a very personal level. We can't go into Snapchat as, hello, I am representing my youth work organization, greetings, young people. It really doesn't work. No one will follow you, no one will engage you. So, and the question, if young people share a lot there, we don't get to see it necessarily, but the question is, should we? Young people need to be able to share with us what they need to share. Because often when youth work goes to an online environment, it's about seeing what young people do when we are not seeing them. So about online communities, I realize I have 2 minutes left. So if we go to an online community, I mean now an organic or a self-run online community, let's example, based on a hobby or an interest, like it could be Japanese culture, it could be photography, it could be maker culture. We had to find our own place. If there is no sense of us going there, just hello, we are youth workers and we are available, then probably we won't have a very big role in that community. But if we can connect it with our activities, then it makes sense. And the question is, do we represent ourselves as youth workers? Do we represent our organization? Or how does it happen? And if there are some issues we need to tackle within those environments, then we also need to figure out, how do we tackle those issues? How do we raise the topics? How do we actually have that discussion? And we need to kind of find our own place there, because if we are just there as hello youth workers, which doesn't make sense to anyone, then we kind of have no place and it really doesn't work. Examples of these could be like hobby groups built around maker activities, photography, like I mentioned. Also, it could be political forums, which actually should be not under hobby groups, but a separate thing. How do we insert this into that discussion? How do we kind of have not destructive, but rather constructive discussion around a political topic? A lot of times youth work shouldn't be about political opinions, but rather it should be about constructive discussion. So how do we kind of traverse the line between supporting constructive discussion activating young people to politics, whatever that might be, while remaining usually politically neutral. That's an interesting topic. Then if we go to general communities like 4chan, which is a very famous example, it's a very chaotic community with its very own specific set of rules. So firstly, how do we understand those rules? And then how do we work within those rules to kind of influence people in that community? It's a very different thing than just taking the youth work that is being done already and just doing the same thing in this online community. And the question is, what else could the online communities be and where could we find them? Because necessarily it's not very easy to always find them. What I often hear talked about in youth work often is also, well, to get into, or these digital platforms are hard to insert ourselves into. A lot of youth work organizations start thinking about creating their own kind of youth work communities. So what could be the youth work provider communities be then? We first have to think about what the community is for that we are building. We really can't assume that we will now build the next Facebook or the next YouTube or whatever. I've had this discussion during my 15-year career several times, like, okay, let's build a platform where young people can serve our video, then where they can upload their videos. And then I'm tentatively raising my hand in the meeting like, yeah, that's cool and all, and technically possibly very cool, but why would young people use our service when all of their friends are on YouTube? Like, why does it make sense? Well, but it's a youth work thing, and then they can share their materials with us. Like, yes, again, but why would they share their own products, their own media, own produced media in our service? It really makes no sense. So there has to be a youth work goal for our community, because we are not content platforms, we are not programmers, we are youth workers. So there needs to be the youth work goal for the whole thing if we do create our own service. And then figuring out what is the target group. So if we build a service for I don't know, from 7-year-old kids to 29-year-old almost kids, really doesn't work. There is such a huge gap that it needs to be a bit targeted. Of course, if it's targeted for a specific hobby group, let's say we want to target people who are really into maker education to share their stuff on a kind of youth-friendly platform and enable peer learning within that platform, then it works. Then it's not really about age, because the topic itself kind of ties people together. And that's the added value then. If you get the kind of non-judgmental thing that is guided by professional youth workers or volunteer youth workers, but still youth workers, then there is an added value. If it's just another platform, and if their friends are already elsewhere, then there is no added value for the young people to use that service. And then we get into old school stuff like youth participation. So who sets the rules for our platform, for our community, and our online community? And who are the people mainly communicating? It's a very different community if the young people are mostly passive recipients of our message, rather than if they are the ones doing the communicating themselves. And here we come to the few examples I still have before I conclude. So one example from a successful online youth community is called Netari. It's a really long-running project in Finland, originally run by the city of Helsinki. And Netari is a project that runs in a virtual environment. It's basically a youth house in an environment called Habbo Hotel. And it's fully virtual. Like, everyone has this little visual character that they interact with other characters. And it's basically structured just like a youth house and it's really crazily popular. So they have to have a queue for young people to get within this virtual youth house, because there are so many people coming in. And this has been already running for years, so it's kind of cool that it's still alive and operational. Another cool and very different online environment would be Cyberhus. So Cyberhouse, it's from Denmark, and it's an online youth information service, like a help service for young people to ask. That it's really mostly run by trained volunteers. The volunteers might be people connected to youth work somehow. They might be connected to social work. And at one point, I remember a lot of them were psychology students that were actually giving answers in their environments. And I think the volunteer thing angle is really cool in this. And it's just like a forum where you can put your questions anonymously, and then other people will answer. One final very different online community would be Fissukraft. And probably a lot of you probably know Minecraft, and Fissukraft is a Minecraft server fully run and operated by the Finnish Evangelical Lutheran Parish, and especially their youth work. And what they do within this online game environment is they've built churches together with young people. They have services within the environment. And one example of the youth work they do is if certain kids have problems with their families, especially with their relationship with their fathers, they get the kids and the fathers playing within their server in this Minecraft environment at the same time, and they get them to engage with each other through this as well. So 3 examples of very different online environments that youth work has really successfully used in the past. And finally, again, materials, publications, resources, because the time is so limited, from both verke.org, which is our website, and digitalyouthwork.eu, which was a Key Action 2 Erasmus Plus project that just concluded that we were a partner in. So this is pretty much what I had for you. If you want to contact me afterwards, here is my email, juha@verke.org. Martin just sent a link in the chat that there is a digital competence conference in February hosted in Austria. Yes, and this will be a big event. I think they're aiming for over 100 participants, but this will probably be a very interesting one. Not possible for everyone to visit this event. You have to apply through SALTO Youth, and your respective national agency will actually be the one to select you in this event. There was one question: what could youth work do against radicalization and populism? Is there an opportunity? I think definitely there is an opportunity. And this opportunity presents itself wherever radicalization and populism presents itself, whether it's in an online environment or it's face-to-face. I think it's not only an opportunity, but it's the obligation of youth work to actually engage these young people in constructive discussion on populism and on radicalization, because this is actually what we do. So I think, yes, it's really essential to do this. Specific platforms where there is more radicalization, I don't think so. It really depends on the bubble you are in, I believe. That's pretty much it for me. So Martin, if there are no other questions. Better to enter existing communities. I think yes, definitely better, because the young people are already there. It takes so much time to build the required user base for any new platform that it really, for me, it makes no sense to build new platforms when there are so many already in place. Of course, it's harder for us to adapt, and then we don't set the rules, actually. So if not posters on Insta, then what? I would say find your own angle. One of the easiest ways is to tell stories, visual stories on Instagram about what is happening within your brand of youth work. That makes sense from a visual perspective. I think The posters is just reiterating the same information that is already available elsewhere. One cool example is check out what is the name of the project? Brian the Onion. It was Dig It Up is the, I think digitup.cloud is the website. It's a training course run by some of my friends and or my trainer colleagues, and it's about storytelling on Instagram also. If you look on Instagram for hashtag Brian the Onion, you can find some examples. It's pretty cool. I unfortunately can't take those questions because I actually have to go very, very soon. So I'll give it over to Martin to wrap up. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.